Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel. And in today's video I'm gonna talk to you about how to keep your characters consistent while drawing a comic. I'm feeling like I am qualified to talk to you about this just because this is something I struggled with myself and hopefully solved it. It seems like so far so good. Like it seems like my characters are consistent, but I actually had a big problem where my characters didn't look consistent and my main character looked so inconsistent, like she looked like a different person from page to page, from frame to frame. It was a disaster. So I had to figure out how to draw characters consistent. And obviously it's very important for the comic because you are visually telling the story, right? So your reader doesn't just get the name Ashley. Ashley did this, Ashley said this, to understand that this is all the same person Ashley. You have to actually draw Ashley that looks exactly like Ashley in every frame, and even though she's moving and she's talking and her face is emoting and angles can be different, lighting situation can be different, she might have a haircut, we still understand it is Ashley. I'm gonna give you some tips that I found for myself to help you hopefully to keep your character consistent. Tip number one is to think why your characters is consistent. And wait, I know it doesn't sound helpful in the beginning, but actually for me it was very important to understand why. Because my character wasn't consistent because I never totally decided how she looks like. I know you might be thinking, wait, we already decided how a character looks like, but did you really decide this to all the details necessary? Because this is what happened to me and my character. My character of Tsukai, I thought I knew how she looks like. I knew what color her skin is, what color her eyes are, I know what color her hair is, I knew what kind of clothes she wears. Basically, I knew her description from what you would typically find in a literature. So you would know, for example, the character hair color, skin color, eye color, that thing, and kind of style of how they dress. This is basically what we usually get, and is this enough because we're in the head of the character, and by being in the head of the character we know that this is this character's head. But in the comics it's definitely not enough. Simply knowing those things is not enough. Your character should have more specifics, and I'm not saying they have a scar over here or they have the bangs with like little gap here. It's not also not good enough. You have to have specifics about the shape of your character eyes, the shape of your character eyebrows, the shape of your character's face. I think you have to have specific characteristics about facial features of your character, and there is a lot of facial features of a person that you can make specific for your character. I would not recommend you focus on all of them. I would think about one or two main features about your character appearance that you would think will be the most recognizable, easier to remember, will stand out a lot, or represent your character personality a lot. So focus on them and then tailor the others to work with those main features that you chose. For example, for my character, I realized that I want her to have very strong eyebrows that are really big and strong and stand out, that make her look not really feminine but make her look very almost stubborn and make her emotions seem very strong. So I settled out to this specific eyebrow shape. I also settled out to her overall face shape that is a little bit wider, with her ears a little bit like standing out. I don't know how to say it in English, but basically with ears a little bit like this, not too close to the skull, but a little standing out. So this is what I decided for her primal features. I also have secondary features that I decided for her, is that her eye shape. Her eye shape, we begin with this eye shape being like the feature of this character, but later we find out that this kind of eye shape is actually belongs to the group of people that live in a certain location, so we'll find it out later, but for now this is the features of my character. So they're secondary because they're not making her standing out from those people too, but they are still helping to create her appearance. And for her eyes, I wanted to make sure that her eyes are almost very, like her brows are very heavy, so her eyes so close underneath her brows so you don't even see her upper lid, it just get pressed when she opens her eyes, so you don't see it. So this is the feature I wanted to have. And another secondary feature that I chose is the way her hair kind of twirl in this area of her face. So they kind of have this weird twirl. I actually stole this twirl from one of my friends in real life. She had this twirl on her, like naturally her hair twirled there this specific way, so I decided to just steal this basically and put it in my comic. So this is the features I realized will be my character features that I wanted to focus, not the color of anything about her. Like, colors are very important, obviously, but they're not, it's not the colors that's really important that you have to keep in mind, but the blending of those colors. That's we're gonna talk about the color work a little later. But basically those are the features I wanted my character to have, and this is the features that are easier for me to keep track of. So I can always remember about her brows and about the shape of her eyes and all of that in different angles. And if I nail those two primary features and those two secondary features, you will recognize that this is the same character. And I also make sure to not give those features to every other character in my story. So this is my first tip. My second tip is a little bit more nuanced, is all about how your character expresses their emotions. And this has to do a lot with the character itself. So how your character, for example, acts when they're excited, how your character acts when they're upset. I mentioned it in the video about how to draw emotion. I will link it somewhere over here. And in that video, I say that basically you have to make sure that your characters emote differently. People tend to have similar spectrum of emotions, but we express those emotions differently depending on circumstances and our own personality and what we feel about expressed emotions, and if we're ashamed of those emotions about particular topics. There's a lot of complexity, but basically it's good to remember that, for example, your character has certain range of emotion, and they express anger one way, they express happiness another way, they express confusion different way. So once you already nail the features of your characters, then every time your character emotes, and if they emote in consistent way, for example, if they're happy, they have very big smile, they're really showing their happiness. Or if they're happy, you only see, for example, a little glimpse of like a little, I don't know, like a little mini smile, something like this. So if this is consistent and you make sure to not have this across the board for all of your characters, you're good. It will help your character to stand out, your reader to remember it, and make sure your character is consistent. Another tip that I have for you is more about color work. So if your comic is black and white, it doesn't really apply to you. But in my case, I kind of like to think about my character having certain colors and certain kind of color combination assigned to this character. And to keep it the most consistent possible, I actually have the same reference pictures for my characters throughout the comic. So I have for example, talking about my character Tsukai, I have reference where I have some picture of an actress that I color corrected her hair, I color corrected already her skin and her eyes a little bit the way I needed, and this is kind of my master reference. I have references for clothes as well. Sometimes for some characters I have hair, eyes, and skin separately, but for example for Tsukai, I have this image that I'm basically using as colors. I color corrected and tweaked it for my base reference, and then every time I have different scene where there's a different color situation, for example a sunset where colors are more orangey, or for example it's night where colors are more blue and less contrasty. So in that case I color correct my reference image, and per color correcting reference image that are already based on the existing image, the color combination color corrects all together. So every time my character is in a different lighting scenario, they still maintain this color combination on their face. So for example for Tsukai, the color combination I have for her, like her hair have a little bit grayish tone, her skin is pale with pink undertone, and she has always this green-gray eyes, and her lashes I draw there a little bit of a dark reddish brown, so they have this kind of tint of color that make her eyes stand out a bit more. So it's like a little color combination that I keep in mind for myself. So that's another tip that I think can be useful, again, if your comic is in color. Another tip is even more nuanced, but I think I mentioned it here, is to keep some thought over idea or impression that you want your character to leave when they appear on the panel or on the page. It doesn't have to be anything as specific as we talked about features and so on. It's more vague, if you will. For example, for my character Tsukai, I always want to her to have this feeling of that she has a fire in her and she can stand up for herself, and she doesn't afraid to fight, and she has this energy built up inside of her. So every time she appears on the page, I keep this in mind, and if I draw, I keep this in mind, and hopefully it comes across on the panels. For example, when I'm drawing Kuroi, my another character, he is more introverted character, so for him there is a lot of more of those messages that are going on, so he's a good example for this situation. So for example, with him, things I keep in mind is every time he appears on the panel, I want him to have masculine appearance but feminine presence. I want his poses and the way he moves and the way he walks and the way he emotes to have this more elegant feminine thing to him. And another thing that I want him to have is he processes a lot of his thoughts before letting people know them. So he's not going to be emoting right away. He actually processes what he's feeling and gives the emotion that he thinks is the correct emotion. So I keep in mind when I'm drawing him that emotion that we see on his face is very carefully curated by him. So they're very condensed, very, timed very well, and he's very mindful about how he expresses himself. Unless there's a situation when he is actually a little bit out of control, he's shocked or scared or something like this, then I also keep it in mind that it's an unusual situation for him and the emotion might look a little bit more extreme to this character because he usually controls them. So this is kind of things that I keep in mind, kind of vibe that character has, kind of idea or feeling of the character that I want to transmit. So this good to keep in mind every time you're drawing them, and just tune to emotion of this character. And if you are tuning into this energy as you're drawing, you will be able to put it on the page. So, at least so I believe. So I hope those tips were helpful, and I hope they will help you to draw your character consistent. If you're creating your own characters, of course, let me know down below in the comments if this is something that you were struggling with, or if there is something that you put a lot of thoughts into, because I definitely did, because I literally struggled with it. Or if you have your own tips of how to keep your characters consistent, please let me know down below. I always open for all of these tips and very interested to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you, guys.